Hello, my name is Ed Sommer. The picture that you have just seen on the screen was taken in 1956 at the Vanguard camp up in the Pelly River area in the Yukon territory. I was 26 years old then, and I am almost 70 now at the time of rearranging and narrating this video. At that time, I was fortunate to spend a whole summer prospecting up there in the Yukon. The memories of this wonderful trip are still very vivid in my memory. And it is always with fondness that I recall them. I hope through this movie of about 30 minutes, I can share some of this feeling with you. As already hinted, the action takes place in the Pelly River area, north of Whitehorse, in the Yukon territory. This was our prospecting domain. A magnificent country of high and rugged mountains, large rivers, meandering creeks, deep and pristine valleys, beautiful mountain passes, thick bushes and hidden rock outcrops. And there was to be a mine at the end of the rainbow. It is during this prospecting season that our team of 4 prospectors staked the original Gall group of claims in the Rose Creek Valley. Jim Paxton, Edward Sommer, Al Coulan, and Ken Willison. It is close to this little lake that we found some interesting mineralization and staked the Gall claims. And here we see Al Coulan in action, measuring and preparing the claim post number 1 for the Gall claims number 15. Here we see the numbering and under whose name they were staked. Some years later, the Gall group of claims was to develop into the largest open-pit lead and zinc mine in Canada. And therefore, they were at the origin of the town of Faro. At that time, Al Coulan was already a well-known prospector in the Yukon. 3 years before, he had made an interesting discovery on the shore of Vanguard Creek. This property was purchased by Prospector Airways, and its value investigated through a diamond drilling program which outlined an interesting ore body of about 11 million tons of good grade lead and zinc ore. Our expedition was to follow up on this Al Coulan discovery by exploring a large area around Mount Mai. At the time, we were both working at Gunnar Mine near Uranium City. Jim from Brooks in Alberta as a geologist, and myself, a recent immigrant from Switzerland, as a machinist. There, I got interested in geology and prospecting, and Jim became my teacher. We often went out in the bush on short prospecting trips and developed good friendships. This explains our partnership involvement for this Yukon adventure. This is how, responding to an ad in the Northern Miner, Jim Paxton and myself were hired by Prospector Airways for the summer of 1956 to join the other 2 prospectors, Al Coulan and Ken Willison, up in the Yukon. We started the 19th of May at Swim Lake for what was to be a 4-month adventure. At first, we formed two teams of prospectors, working out from two base camps. Al Kulan and Ken Willison formed one team, while Jim Paxton and myself formed the second one. We were to meet at intervals of 2 to 3 weeks at pre-established dates and meeting places on the shore of a lake where the supply plane could land, the first one being set for the 10th of June at lake number 8. At these rendezvous, we revised our plans and for logistical reasons decided to prospect out from the same base camp. This made camp life much more agreeable and greatly facilitated our camp moves. We had about 10 pack horses to move our base camps. Two natives, Wilfrid Brown and Jimmy Johnson of Champaign near Whitehorse, were in charge of them. Once at camp, the horses were left free to wander around, and I was always amazed by the skill of Wilf and Jimmy to track them down when we needed them for the next move. And now, I invite you to watch this movie as I took it in 1956. Good watch. We landed on the ice of Swim Lake on the 19th of May 1956. First, we improvised a sleigh to transport all the material, camp gears and food to the shore. The two people pulling the sleigh stayed only for the first 3 weeks with the team of Al Kulan and Ken Willison. They went back to Whitehorse on the 10th of June with the returning plane, which had come in with a supply to our first meeting place at lake number 8. We made our first camp at this former campsite where a convenient food cache had been built previously. There we waited for the other members of the party. They had started a week earlier and were coming in with the pack horses by the canal road from Johnson Crossing. This is certainly a most unusual way of fishing, but it was quite effective. That evening we all enjoyed this grilling at supper. The pack horse team arrived in the evening of the 22nd of May. The next day we prepared the grubs and camp gears for the two prospecting teams, and on the 24th we started to move north toward the Tail River area. We reached and crossed Blind Creeks on the 26th of May. The shores were still bordered with ice. Jim Paxton and myself forded it on foot in the icy cold water and soon made camp on the hill on the opposite side. As you can see, there are no signs of new green growth yet. The horses could only feed on dry grass, which was scarce and of poor quality. This has caused us some problems at the start. We are now past the 10th of June. Within the last 2 weeks or so, new leaves and new grass have rapidly grown. The horses have now plenty to eat and are getting in much better shape. The two teams have joined forces. The routine of setting camp is much more effective. We are quite comfortable with our 2 tents for 6 people and our large tarpaulin to protect our gears and food. We took turns at cooking. That day, Ed Sommer was on duty. We are now getting ready to leave the base camp for a 2 or 3 days side trip in the surrounding country. We always carried a well-sharpened axe to clear our way through the bushes. We also carried rifles or pistols as protection in case of a sudden encounter with a grizzly. Actually, although we have seen them at several occasions, we never had to use our weapons. We simply kept our distance and stayed always vigilant about a surprise-type encounter. This natural bridge happened to be just at the right place. Here is Ken Willison crossing it. And now is the turn of Ed Sommer. With the return of the ducks, spring is at its full up north. And fortunately the mosquitoes have also appeared and we're getting more and more aggressive. Here we are preparing to move our base camp again. Packing the gears and food in the pack boxes. Folding the tents. Folding the tarpaulin. Lining up everything for an even and orderly loading of the horses. The pack saddle is retained by a belly cinch and the pack boxes suspended with a sling rope. Watch here how Jimmy Johnson and Will Brown are lifting and securing the pack boxes in a synchronized move to properly balance the load on the pack saddle. The boxes and the top load are covered with a tarpaulin and the whole pack secured with a rope and tightened by the typical diamond hitch knot. All horses have now been loaded. We have a last look around, get our axes, and we are ready to go. We always walk ahead of the pack horses to find the best path and clear the way as needed. Several times we ran into some old burns and with the tangle of crisscross trees on the ground, which made our progress quite difficult. Even out in the bush, we took time to stay presentable. Here is Ken Willison having a special haircut at Al Coulan's high fashion shop in the Rose Creek Valley. And here is Jim Paxson in deep thinking, while Jimmy Johnson and Wilf Brown are on kitchen cleanup duty. From Rose Creek, we made a short visit to the Vangoda camp to fetch some foods and the mail which had been left there to our attention. The log building on the left was the lab in which the drill cores were analyzed and the Vangoda ore body outlined. We often enjoyed a late supper around a campfire like this one. Here a lost little bird. We hoped it would soon find its parents. This is a smoke signal to indicate our position to the pilot of the plane coming in to fetch Ken Willison, Jimmy Johnson and myself to return to the Tear River area. We are now flying back to a previous camp at lake number 11 to do some additional staking at a promising location. This is our supply plane coming in. Listening to its approaching and growing sound and then its sighting were always exciting moments. With it came in fresh bread, vegetables, meat, fruits, and other food to vary our diet. There was always some special goodies sent by Al Coulan's wives, such as the delicious ice cream from their dairy. even fresh potatoes in this balalaika vodka box. Also, always much appreciated were the news from home and friends. Before leaving, Ron, the pilot, will have a coffee and will tell us all about the last news from the outside. On his way back to Whitehorse, he will carry our own outgoing mail and our list of special requests for the next return in about 3 weeks at some other convenient meeting place. These field supplies were organized by Ivor Mast, who was in charge of the Prospector Airways office in Whitehorse. Some larger rivers could not be forded on foot, and we had to build a raft to cross them. For this, we used standing dry trees. These are light and sound, while fallen trees are heavier because of moisture and often rotten inside. The side logs are dovetailed for a close and strong fit of the cross members. See how Al Kullan and Ken Willison are carefully shaping the cross members with their axe and adjusting them almost with a machinist's precision. The center logs are simply cut square and fastened with a rope which will automatically tighten even further as it gets wet. Here we are crossing the Pelly River, about 28 kilometers downriver from today's Faro Bridge. This was the largest raft we made. It took us a good full day to build it. We had to make 2 crossings to get all our materials across the river. Once unloaded, we hand-pulled the raft upriver twice the drift distance so we could get back to our first starting point. Here we are having a welcome rest after the second crossing. Before making the second traverse, we chased the horses to swim across the river. This required mud yelling and agitating of sticks and branches, and even rifle firing in the air to convince them to go. This shows the crossing of the much smaller Tay River. For the most part, the lower area of the country was covered with much overburden. So, we paid special attention to the course of streams, creeks and rivers where we had the best chance to find rock exposures. The observation of the boulders and other materials they carried give us a good indication about the general upstream rock formation. We also often made geochemical samplings of small streams. This promising gossan was found by Al Cullen and Jim Paxton. And here is Ken Willison having a close look at it. Toward the end of July, Al Cullen and Ken Willison found some interesting mineralization near a small lake in the Rose Creek Valley. This prompted the staking activity shown here. Here we see Ken Willison and Al Cullen marking the center line of the Gall group. Al Cullen is now preparing the main post for climb number 15. Meanwhile, Ken Willison has prepared the other posts. Notice the date, 30 July 1956. This tree was to be a bridge, but it was taken away by the current. So we have a second try. Al Cullen and Ken Willison were excellent outdoorsmen and prospectors. They just loved being out in the wilderness. Jim Paxton and myself learned a lot with them. I'm also pleased to mention here that our crew of 6 people got along very well throughout the whole prospecting season. Al Cullen is now clearing the bridge for us to go across. And now is the turn of Ken Willison. And here is our bridge in the glistening and silvery light of the afternoon sun. Toward the end of August, we crossed over from Anvil Creek Valley to the Pelly, passing through this beautiful mountain pass. The prospecting season ended on the 11th of September. We are now on our way to Carmack's with the horses. That is Ken Willison, Wilf Brown and myself. Al Cullen, Jim Paxton and Jimmy Johnson had already returned to Whitehorse by plane from the Pelly River. We had a beautiful weather and the autumn color here in the Magondy Valley, and all along the way were just gorgeous. Here an obstacle halted our progression. Ken Willison promptly removed it and here we can go again. We had our last camp at this beautiful place on the shore of the legendary Yukon River. The next day we encountered the first outside people, a family from Carmack's camping out in the bush for their autumn hunting and picking wild berries. We reached Carmack's in the afternoon of the 24th of September after 13 days of travel. Today, the same distance can be comfortably done in about 2.5 hours by car. Up north, the winter was at the door. It was time to end our expedition.